Hi, we're live.
I think we are. Finally got it sorted.
Okay, so we're here to talk to you guys about using Compass tools in the classroom. So today's Compass webinar, Facebook Live, is titled 3 Ways to Use Compass in the Classroom. But if you don't know us, let us introduce ourselves.
So I'm Elaine Ryman, and I'm an early years teacher, and I've recently graduated with the Compass Education as a Compass Education Practitioner Level 2, and I'm just beginning my journey now. I'm trying to start to integrate with the children in lower primary and early years. So this is for me to listen to some of Kate's great ideas and to bring you along on my journey as I also discover how and best practices of how we can use this with the kids in the classroom.
Great. So I'm a primary teacher, and I've been with Compass Education since 2009, and I've used it in early years classrooms, grade 2, grade 3, and I've helped implement it in grade 1, grade 4, and grade 5 classrooms. And I thought I would just share a bit about my experience with you.
Cool. Where to begin? First of all, probably a little bit of housekeeping. If you like our video, press the wow face for us. That would be really helpful, just to see. And also post, where are you tuning in from? I'd love to hear if you are, where over in the world you are, wherever in the world you are, to see if we can, map a little bit of how far we're reaching out to you.
Yeah,
great.
Looks like we have one watcher right now. Thank you for the like. Okay, so when I started back a long time ago, I always thought about how I would implement a Compass tool at the beginning of a unit. Mm-hmm. So that's tip number 1, to start planning at the beginning of the unit. And one of the ways I did this was during a unit, which is a unit on identity in IBPYP language. It's called the Who We Are unit. And our central idea was recognizing our common humanity enables us to act with compassion and understanding. Mm-hmm. And I really thought that the Compass was a really good tool for kids to start with themselves. And so my teaching partner and I printed out Compass formats. Basically, they could just draw it on on anything. Label N for nature, S for society, E for economy, and W for well-being. And then I had the kids reflect just about themselves. And they reflected, what do I like to do in nature? What do I like to spend money on? What do I like to play with my friends? And then and how do I take care of myself for well-being? Mm-hmm. And they filled those out, and that was much more directed and pointed and took their thinking a lot further than if I would have just said, tell me about yourself.
Okay. That kind of aligns with what I've actually started in some ways in my classroom as well. So I'm teaching the early years 2, which are basically all of them 3 to 5 year olds, but my focus is on the 4 to 5 year olds. And I've also put the Compass up in the classroom. Basically, it was just a provocation in the morning with paints, and I had them just paint over the paper, and then we made signs. I didn't talk to the kids about what the signs were per se. It was just there, and then cut it out with them later, and then afterwards looked at the Compass as a compass and explained to them, have you seen this? Asked them basically, have you seen this anywhere before? What does that look like? And immediately the first thing that came up was, it's a treasure map. And I was like, yes, that's a connection right there. So the kids were looking at it through their play-based way of thinking. So although it wasn't, because we have a complete play-based curriculum and a play-based philosophy that we're running in our program, so there's no big planning per se what goes ahead, because we follow the students' interest, and that's basically what I want to do with this Compass tool also. So as afterwards, once the Compass was already completed, and we went through a little bit about what the S might stand for, the A, all the letters might stand for, and took them and I took them on that journey to say, okay, let's make a treasure map. And for me, it was all about direction. So trying to show the children that compasses give us direction, and that's basically as far as I've got in terms of interacting with the children with the tool per se. But the secondary way of using it is a big poster in the classroom, and I use it to pin up photographs of the students doing things in the classroom that might relate to these different areas. So while they're engaged in any other play experience, I've got photographs of that, and I'll add them to the compass as they go along. Now, I only talk to the children who are engaged in that activity or in that photo. With them, I'll have that small conversation about how it fits in that different area.
Great. And then what we did after the compass themselves, because we were looking at recognizing common humanity, the students got together with another person and they made a Venn diagram and they compared their likes and their dislikes. We then came and sat on the carpet, and with our compassed likes for nature, society, well-being, and economy, we took colored thread and connected the people that had similarities. And we realized through this activity that many people like to go to the beach. Many people like to play Minecraft. And they saw that they had a common humanity. And it wasn't just the people that were their friends that they had things in common with. So it took us much further into the inquiry, and it set us up as a really good provocation to get us thinking about the unit.
Yeah. That would be cool. I can see that.
So a second way goes along with what Elaine was talking about. Sometimes you have an emergent curriculum and you're not planning out units in advance. And you're in the middle of taking them on a journey. At one point, I was teaching about how we express ourselves. And this is tip number 2, which is using a compass tool in response to what the kids are doing. So more responsive. Maybe not within the lesson, but within a larger context of trying to get them to a deeper understanding. The understanding I was working towards was that people maintain beliefs and values through celebrations and traditions. And we realized that the kids were getting really good at talking about celebrations and traditions, but they had no idea about the beliefs and values. They weren't making any connections at all. So they could talk about Hanukkah and what you did and its traditions and its celebration, and like really superficially about the clothes that you would wear, the games you might play, and the music.
Yeah, that's a very typical thing to do when you do celebrations, or the connections you make, right?
Yeah. And so I suggested to my team at the time that we try and use the Iceberg. The Iceberg is a tool that you look at modes of thinking at different levels.
Yeah.
What you can see is the top level, and so we put all of the things that were superficial up at the top of the iceberg, and we took them down through to the bottom of the iceberg that was their beliefs and values. So the iceberg was a great tool to take the kids further into their thinking and actually meet the goal of having the kids understand the central idea. People maintain beliefs and values through celebrations and traditions.
That's nice, yeah. I like that. I'm just thinking of a time I did use the iceberg as well in a kindergarten classroom. However, I guess my focus at that point wasn't necessarily for the students to understand too deep about the iceberg, but to understand what an iceberg is and how we can use it later as a tool. I had with the students, we had been planting rice, and we've had rice growing in the center for a while, and I took them on that. I basically wanted to have them introduce them to how the the cycle of how we deal with the rice and everything takes a long period of time, and that there's a lot of value in that process. But also, what does that mean for us? We're living in an Asian country here, and
we're
rice,
in Cambodia.
Yeah, and
do let us know where you're watching from. We can see that we have three people watching live right now.
Basically, rice is a very, very valuable thing here, obviously, and for them to be able to connect a little bit to where they're living, and that having rice on the table is not that easy. So I took them on that journey as well through the iceberg, but again, starting at the very, very, very basics. First, I drew the iceberg on the board, and then they talked about penguins and swimming and going on a journey and cold, and took them step by step through what that might look like, until they got the idea, and then I drew the lines on, and then we started mapping out, rice, the connections between rice. I can't really explain that all right now. It's like off the top of my head. I'm like, whoa.
But we could probably put some links in the comment section below to link you to pictures, because if you're watching and you're not a Compass practitioner, or you haven't done Compass education trainings and you're just interested, you might not know what the Compass is or the Iceberg is, and we can link to what those tools would look like, or you could Google them. Systems thinking tools.
Yeah, I've got some great photographs from that process as well, so that would help to explain a little bit what that looked like, especially with the younger kids. It's just really hard to explain in terms of where their understanding goes, but the idea is, for me in this context, is begin that process of instilling a mindset of sustainability, that your decisions have a consequence, there's a consequence to everything we decide to do. And I think that's the earlier we can get that across to students, the better.
The better.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
Just a shout out to Kathleen. Kathleen, nice to see you listening in and watching. Thank you for your comment.
From the UK, welcome.
Fantastic. So a third way to use Compass tools in the classroom is in the middle of a lesson. So I really feel like tools is a really good word for the suite of thinking systems tools that Compass provides educators, because they're things that you can pull out at any time. So they're things that you can pull out when you're planning a unit at the very beginning. That will just help you get to the understandings you need to get to easier. They're tools that help make things easier, right?
Like the visible thinking tools, right?
Yes, exactly. And so the third thing I wanted to say to you was that you can use Compass thinking tools in the classroom in the middle of a lesson. So let me give you an example of this. I was teaching a unit called Sharing the Planet, and for this unit, the kids had to understand the concept of interdependence. And I had done several activities about food chains, food webs, and how everything is dependent on everything else. And I could tell that it was incredibly abstract. This was in Thailand in a second grade classroom. And immediately I thought, you know what would be great right now? The kids would really get it if I did the triangle game. And then we played the triangle game. And which, if you don't know the triangle game, it is a game where you stand and you choose two people. So everybody in the classroom stands up and they pick two people and they try to make an equilateral triangle. And then you can put certain systems conditions into it. And you try to see if you can get the system to balance. And we looked at who was connected to who and how we were all dependent and how we all kept moving. If this person moved, then these people moved. So that was a really powerful tool to use in the moment, in the middle of a lesson.
A nice introductory to that complexity as well.
I wonder if you could use the triangle game in an early years classroom.
I think the children are so driven on their own, in their own little worlds, that I'm not sure that would work straight off. It would have to be more probably in the area of PE, when we all go to the gym or something, and you just have a few kids together, maybe 6 or 7 kids who want to play, and I'll explain the game and see how that would work. But it would probably have to be like, I think the older, like the 5-year-olds, the younger ones are just probably not ready for that at all. Other ways, though, I think you could use to introduce that complexity with all that web idea is with like string or wool, and sitting in a circle, throwing the wool across and having a look at what a big web that makes when you finish, and how things could be all knotted together, what that looks like. Yeah,
great. So just to recap, or do we have any questions? Hi, Ajanbu. I can see you're watching. And Robert, fantastic. So great to see so many of you online. Do we have any questions? We'll just give you a minute, maybe to type in your questions if there are. If there aren't any, that's okay too. We appreciate you watching. I'll review the 3 things that I mentioned. The 3 compass tools that I talked about today in this Facebook Live webinar were the Compass of Sustainability tool, the Iceberg, and the Triangle game, which the Triangle game is a game from the Systems Thinking Playbook that we use in the Compass workshop.
And that in an early years or lower grade setting would basically be the compass tool itself, make a connection to that, look at how kids use maps in the classroom, making treasure hunt games and things like that, and giving them that beginning, the beginning ideas that a compass gives you a direction. You can use it to guide where you're going. And then with the iceberg, what I was trying to explain with the rise is also just begin the idea of what an iceberg is before you go into the deeper levels on how you can use it as a tool. But what is an iceberg? That there's a big chunk of it underneath the water and just a little bit on top of the water, and get them to have a little bit of that picture. They did think about the movie, one of the movies, what was that?
Ice Age.
Yeah, Ice Age was one of the movies they came up with, and there was another one with the Happy Feet.
Yes.
We did connect to Happy Feet in the, and then the last one probably would be more the web connections with throwing wool across the room, across a circle or string, and having them look at, whoa, things get really knotted, but we have commonalities through and connections that we can make with each other.
Yeah, fantastic. And so the 3 ways to start using Compass in the classroom would be to start at the beginning of a unit. Add it into your planning. Think about what you need to do and how can one of these tools just help you do something better and faster. Second way, in the middle of the unit, as you're reflecting on where are my kids getting to, is there a Compass tool that you can use to get them to that outcome or understanding in a way that they haven't done? And the third way would be to, in the moment, in the middle of a lesson, you have a tool bag and you can use it, and you can use one of the things that you know that you've learned in the Compass Level 1 education practitioner and Compass Level 2 education practitioner. And it looks like we have a question.
And then while you're reading the question, in the earlier setting with those tools, once you've created your a nice version of a compass in some ways, with your art projects or whatever, hang it up in the room and refer back to it often. And what I've used mine for is to hang up activities that the kids are doing in the classroom in the different areas on the compass, and then have that conversation with the kids, the ones involved in the picture. Have a reflective conversation with them as far as you can, of course, and post their pictures in those different areas, and they will be able to come back to it and remind themselves about it every now and again.
Fantastic. So I think our question is for you, Elaine.
Really?
What is the biggest challenge to using Compass with early learners, especially in regards to seeing things as sets and subsets, systems and subsystems?
I think you have to leave the jargon out of it and really see it through play. I think the first thing is it's really just on you as the practitioner or the educator to recognize the value in the moment, in that teachable moment, recognize the value, and then decide well, what language can I use to help this moment, this child or these children think about the consequences of whatever action they're taking.
Because early learners really are systems thinkers, aren't they?
They
so
are.
They would be doing something, and you might just point out that what they're doing is showing a connection.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you are familiar with, I think it's Kath Murdoch. She talks about split screen thinking. So it's just that I like to be able to tell children, not all the time, because you don't want to frighten them away from an exploration that they're totally engaged in. But when it's suitable, remind children about, what you see them doing. Talk to them about what you're observing. I can see you're really thinking right now. I can see that you had this problem. Describe what you saw, and then tell them. And I can see that you made a really good decision, because if you didn't make the decision that way, this, and this could have happened. And just help them to build those bridges towards, that their actions really have a consequence.
And I think you're kind of answering the next question I see. It says, a question I'm always asked, do you have any suggestions about the language to use with our youngest learners? I don't know. I think there's different beliefs in how we use language in early years. Because I've worked with people before who believe that you don't need to use all the big language, but I personally do, because I think the more the children are exposed to the correct vocabulary and the language in context, they will soon be able to figure out what the real meaning of that word was. That being said, even with my own children, I remember, talking to my son over and over again about he needs to take responsibility. That's your responsibility. That's your responsibility. Cleaning up is your responsibility. And I think he was about 6 or so one day when I said, that's your responsibility. And he turned around and said, Mom, what's responsibility? So eventually they will, ask the question. But I think that you could still, I don't think there's any harm in using the language that makes most sense. Of course, not, for lack of a better word, dumbing things down too much. You can, of course, go broad and explain, and then put the word back on top. So they really start making that connection. In the example that I used for second graders in the Who We Are unit, we used the word we had the economy section, so we didn't change that language. But when we were talking about it as economy, we were like, what do you like to buy? What are the things that you want to spend your money on? If you were given money as a gift, what would you use it to buy with? Yeah. What would you buy with it? And then they were able to think about buying as economy, as exchange of money for goods. So I think sometimes you can just brainstorm, what are other ways to say, or what are other ways to label this concept that we're trying to get to that is appropriate for the context that we're in.
Yeah. And in early years, that for me is all in the drama corner. Like if they're playing shop in the drama corner or restaurant or anything like that, and I've got photos or footage of that goes for me up on the board in the economy section. Probably sometimes economy and well-being, or depending on what I draw out and what conversation I have with them. And then sometimes they choose where they want to put the photo themselves. Like if they talk more about the food that they're preparing in the drama corner with their friends, then it's comfort. It's about something makes you feel good. Why do you like to eat? It makes me feel good. And then it goes in the wellness corner for me. So great. Yeah, you just play with them and make it fun, because if it's too serious, you're going to lose them, and you're going to lose yourself in the process as well, because you'll get frustrated because you think they're not getting it, and I want them to get it, but they'll get it when they're ready to get it. So just let them play, and I like to use that triple screen or double screen effect, where I know what's happening in that moment of the play. So they're playing and enjoying whatever they're doing, but I can then talk about when it fits, talk about what I've observed, what I see them doing, and how that's great or how that fits, and just giving them that kind of feedback.
Fantastic. So thank you for watching our first Facebook Live webinar for Compass Education practitioners.
This was our first.
This was our first, and we'll have another one in May. So we'll do this every other month on a Wednesday at 6 o'clock Bangkok time, which is GMT +7, I believe.
Yeah.
And we will have different Compass practitioners come to you live from their own settings and talk about their experience. So we hope to see you again soon. Please do leave us a comment or hit the like button to give us some
face, wow face.
to give us some feedback. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.